Welcome back to Career Catastrophe. I'm here today with Steph talking about all things energy related with Dave Sanders.
What's the EPC rating of your house?
So I'm not entirely sure. In fairness, I don't think I know. It's not like I don't care, but one might say I'm not sure I do. But no, it's obviously important to have an energy efficient home. The reality is I bought my home because I fell in love with it. And so it's single glazed, very cold windows. It is a very cold house. Probably doesn't rate very well, so perhaps I just decided not to look too closely. But, that's how people buy properties, really.
Absolutely. So I'm guessing you've got a lot of work to do before Christmas comes and it gets really cold.
Well, it just got colder because over the weekend, my son kicked a football through the front bay. We've got sort of leaded glass windows. And I was in such shock, I couldn't even be angry. So now we have a little piece of cardboard. The windows are on order, but I called the window man and said, is there any chance you might be able to fast track? So it's cold.
Wowzer. I'm quite lucky. I live in a new build, so my property is less than 10 years old. So I had my EPC Plus rating as an A. I'm very proud about that. But enough about me and you. Anyway, so let's welcome in our guest, Dave Sanders from Vibrant Energy. Welcome, Dave. Welcome, Dave. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
We're very interested to talk about all things EPC and energy related. But before we do, I just need to address the elephant in the room. You are the first Northerner that we've had on the show.
I'm outnumbered.
Born a Northerner, not such a Northerner anymore.
Oh, yes, you're near Brighton now. So, he's the error of his ways.
Shots fired.
It couldn't be any further south if I tried, I think.
So what made you leave the north?
So, I guess...
That's not a trick question.
Yeah, so I met my wife, my wife now, whilst we were at university in Leeds, and her family lived down in London. So that was the southern draw. So we made the step to London, and then more recently the step down to the south coast. I was born in Harrogate and spent all of my childhood and teens in Harrogate as well. So schooled and university in Leeds, so not too far. And I guess we, through my family, we spent a long time moving when we lived in Harrogate. So my parents had other jobs, but would buy and sell properties that we were living in, fix them up and sell them on. So that was, we were always on the move, and maybe I think 13 or 14 family homes during my childhood. So, it was almost one a year, really.
Property's an addiction. It is an addition.
I feel like I'm the odd one out on this podcast, aren't I? I do apologise,
everybody. You're from the Skipton Group, and I'm from the estate agency, so I live and breathe property. But I do think if you're born into the world of property, it's an obsession, it's an addiction. And
I could never live anywhere where there's no architecture or history.
Never live in a new build.
No.
New
Oh,
build.
no.
Those lovely, unhaunted new builds.
And I should say that for all those lovely people, lovely new builds, and some of them are built very, very well, and some of them are not.
Yep.
I'm very pleased that you're happy in your homes, and there's no judgment. But I mean, if you just love the architecture and the history and the stories and the ghosts that Steph says she's in any period properties, I mean, it is quite possible that in guess what happened in this room? How many years? This is probably someone's living room, or ballroom, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
This is very normal.
Full of history. Yeah.
So did you move all around Harrogate? Was it around Harrogate, or did you?
Yeah. So it's around the surrounding areas. So
that must be a lot as a kid, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But I think you're so adaptable at that age. You just get on with it. But I remember living in building sites with no carpets and concrete floors in the. I mean, that's fashionable these days, isn't it? But concrete floors in the living rooms, and because the properties were always on the mend. But I guess that not having an attachment to a single property growing up, meant that when the opportunity came up to move, it's not seen as a big thing in my eyes, So when I left Harrogate, Claire was living down in London after university, and I wasn't going to ask her to come and move up to Harrogate because I was really comfortable with with relocating and being in a new area, new environment. So naturally, I was the one that moved down to London.
It's a common theme, actually, with some of our guests that, if you're used to dealing in property, buying, selling, moving, it's so easy, it's so normal. It's not something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't, operate in that industry, it can be incredibly daunting.
Yeah, and people say it's the most stressful thing in the world to move house, and I quite enjoy it. I think the opportunity to take on a new project or just declutter, or
Because it didn't have any belongings as a child.
No.
I think if I moved house, I think, right, just get rid of all of those toys, don't bring them.
Yeah.
Just put them outside. It's a great way to declutter.
Yeah, definitely.
Expensive way to declutter.
Me and my husband have moved together 4 times, and every time we've moved, it has been this close to getting divorced.
Did you have a good estate agent? The fact that you can't remember them tells me that you needed us. No,
Well, we've been in our lovely new build for nearly 10 years now, so it's been
Did
a
you
while.
buy it from the developer?
We absolutely did.
Of course you did.
Of course we did.
It's so true though, isn't it? The estate agent that we bought from down in Hove, he's now one of my good mates. We go drinking together, and
So you're a fan of estate agents? So
that one particular, yeah. But yeah, he's you do a good estate agent will really get to know the people and
make or break.
Did you pay him to say that?
Look, this man has clearly spent time with estate
A
agents
lot of time.
and knows the value. knows the value.
I studied a trade as well at the same time that I was at university, so I kind of fell into becoming a qualified gas engineer plumber around the same sort of time.
The really great news is everyone needs to know a great gas engineer. I now have your number.
Can you fix windows, King? Holly's got a hole.
Well, so being a plumber sort of initially by trade, did you deal with a lot of estate agents at that part of your career? I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I was on the other side of the fence, I guess. But yeah, I was. We had numerous contracts with estate agents. Plenty of maintenance work from that side of things. But yeah, it was a family business. So very different to working in corporate, but great experience.
So best thing about working with an estate agent?
Best thing about the volume of work was incredible.
Well, you only get a volume if you're good at what you do. Because
yeah.
you get dropped very fast if
and
you're
it's
not up to scratch.
You're
or not
absolutely
speedy.
right. Yeah, it's so much of it's relationship driven, and spending that time in the branch just talking to the guys, at the start and end of each job was super important to maintain that relationship with the guys. Yeah.
And you're still working with so many of our estate agency brands now. We've got over 80 brands in the Connells Group.
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst part about working with us?
I think the urgency that comes through, and it's always the last week of the month. So yeah,
Everyone's trying to move in.
Yeah, everyone's trying to move in, move out. And it's there's the we need this doing today, or we need this doing tomorrow. But after 15 years of working around that trade, it's become part of the norm, really, part of the expectation. Throughout my career, I've spent a long time trying to get closer to the energy industry. That was definitely a goal of mine, a career goal of mine. And I had networked with a director when I worked in Screwfix, who then subsequently moved on and ended up working in Vibrant. So I'd been offered a position in Vibrant not so long ago, actually. Only started 12 months ago with Vibrant. And yeah, the attraction of it felt like my entire career path come into a point, really. So everything around property services, customer service, which has been a massive part of my previous job roles, and the opportunity to work in Vibrant, which is predominantly a property services and energy business as well. It was an exciting opportunity. So there wasn't any hesitation. It was an immediate yes when that offer came about.
A lot of our listeners might not know what Vibrant is. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the business?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we're the UK's largest EPC provider. So we do anywhere between 80,000 to 100,000 EPCs a year. And in the last couple of years, I guess there's been a slight change in direction, really, where EPCs are not only being completed from a compliance perspective, but also completed by customers to really truly understand the energy efficiency of their property. So we've really run with that over the last couple of years, last 18 months, and developed an end-to-end customer journey that takes the customer from understanding the energy efficiency of their property all the way through to guiding them and supporting them through the process of upgrading their property as well. So yeah, it's that's been a really interesting 12 months developing that proposition, and super exciting.
I have noticed as an estate agent over the years that if you've got an EPC, you're ticking a box. You're thinking, right, there it is. I can stick it on the internet now because I'm compliant. But you may have improved your property over the period of time that you've lived there. And there is a benefit to getting an upgraded EPC, even if it has not expired. Because in the worst situations, particularly with the cost of living crisis, buyers will come along and say, well, I've had a look at the EPC rating and actually I'm concerned about the fuel bills if I buy your property, and I've used it as a negotiation tactic. And that's the point where some sellers will go, I think I should get a new EPC because it's not accurate.
And what we've been doing at Vibrant is making sure that we take that full holistic view of the property, what can be done to that particular property, what the customer wants to achieve from upgrading the property, and make sure that the package that we put together is tailored to them. And I think that's having that independent view is absolutely key. And a lot of the banks and building societies now are realising that, and commissioning reports for customers that give them this view. There's 30 or so eco measures out there that you could apply to your property, but everyone only knows really of insulation, heat pump, and solar. There's all sorts of stuff out there that's things like infrared heating and voltage optimization products and things like that can significantly improve your energy efficiency without having to stick triple glazing in, or without having to stick external wall insulation on your property. So
I think you're right. A lot of it is about education, isn't it? Because
huge amount, yeah.
It's about providing people with simple, clear information of knowing where to go.
So, Dave, we've talked a lot about Vibrant and energy, and I think I've learned a lot. Tell us, this podcast is about sort of career catastrophes, and we sort of say career defining moments, and often they are moments that impact you professionally, but also personally. Can you give us, is there a moment in time where you have redirected your career as a result of perhaps a catastrophe along the way? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I feel I've had a fairly varied career actually, which is probably good for the content of this podcast. But like I said, I did a business studies degree at Leeds Met, and whilst I was studying business studies, I ended up qualifying as a gas engineer, which is really random. But my dad had started a plumbing business, and I just I was really interested in what he was doing, so got involved in the family business. That was around the 2004, 2005.
So while you were at uni?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, during my first year at uni. So
when you were out drinking and partying? Yeah,
there was a tough balance.
I can see where this is going.
So yeah, interestingly, it wasn't the partying that threw me off course. It was more the economy actually, which I'm sure people will remember the word credit crunch back in 2007, 2008, and we'd built this business over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and watched it essentially dissipate overnight. As soon as that word credit crunch was mentioned, it was people that had money just stopped spending it, and people who didn't have money had even less money. So we watched, 50, 60% of our business just stop overnight. And that was a tough thing to deal with, because we had people on the payroll, that were friends, had become friends, almost like a family.
It's incredibly difficult, isn't it? If you're a good employer or leader or manager and you care about your staff, you want to be able to, you're responsible for their livelihood.
Absolutely. I reflect on it as been the toughest time in my career, I think. And I was clearly incredibly inexperienced at that age, but, and I left it too long. I thought I'll ride the wave. This will be gone in a few months' time and we'll be back to normal. And it just didn't. So made a tough decision to close the business down at that point.
Did you feel responsible for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, every decision leading up to that point, the contracts that we'd taken on, were, I felt responsible for making those decisions. So I took a couple of years out at that point and did the gap year thing, I guess, at the end of
More
university.
drinking.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so
And did
so
it
travelled
impact
around
you
the world.
mentally? Did it impact you?
Yeah, you don't realise it at the time. I think sometimes I was in my early 20s at that time, and you live day by day and get on with it. But certainly thinking back, I took a couple of years out off the back of that. I think I'd done 3 or 4 years without taking a holiday, working every weekend, working every hour God sends, just trying to keep the business afloat through that time. So we myself and Claire, who's now my wife, we decided to just go traveling for a couple of years. And again, that is a life-defining moment, to travel the world for 2 years and absorb so many different cultures, meet so many people.
Super perspective, really.
Yeah, and we worked in different countries as well whilst we were traveling, so it wasn't all holiday. It was kind of like a working holiday. So it kind of had additional benefits in my mind as well. I think understanding a bit more about about how industry works in different countries, and then when we returned to the UK, I had a real I was just really ready to get stuck into a corporate career, and not, I suppose, a little bit still burnt from being self-employed. So I was definitely leaning towards securing a job rather than being self-employed, but really thirsty to get that career back on track. So.
And how did you find the change from going self-employed into the corporate world, working for somebody else?
Big change. Yeah, big change. It was, I actually, straight from being self-employed, I started working with Screwfix after that. So, I think they had about 10,000 employees at the time. So, yeah.
So we're interested to gain insights from people's past about interviews. So what's the best thing you've either done or seen in an interview that you would share with our listeners?
That's a good question. I've had the added bonus. I worked in retail for a while in Screwfix, so I was interviewing. There was a huge volume of people that were interviewed in my time there, so I've seen some things. I think the best thing, we were recruiting for an internal comms position at the time, and this was a good few years ago. And there was lots of applications came through, as they do, with CVs and cover letters attached, and one of them caught my attention because there was nothing attached to it, but there was just a link to a video. And this is probably more commonplace to do this, but this particular lady had been made redundant from her current role, and she'd created a video in the style of the 10 o'clock news, of herself, being the 10 o'clock
Good
news
for her.
presenter, just so she took us through the headlines of her career and her experience and her skill set, and then there was a cut to VT where her ex-boss was then on screen, giving her a glowing reference as well. So so this was more part of the application process rather than the interview. But yeah, we were looking for someone to bring a dynamic change to our internal comms structure and brings a fresh look into the business. And so just on the application alone, I would have hired her, but HR and recruitment wanted us to interview, so we did, and she got the job.
Creative. We talked about this with one of our previous guests about being memorable.
Standing out
For the right reasons.
For the right
Yeah,
reasons.
Not for the wrong ones.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so dependent on the business, isn't it? I think she very much picked up the vibe of the business, was very, very engaging and supportive of a bit of fun and that sort of stuff. So, so she judged it very well.
But look, we've got a game to play with you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I think you're normally up first.
I'm normally up first. Let's have a see. So this is a multiple choice question.
Yep.
We're going easy on you. How many vibrant steps are there in the pathway to getting off grid? A3, B4, C5, or D6?
Ooh, we've got various alliterations of this. So I'm going to say 5.
Correct. And I'm not going to lie, as I read that, I wasn't quite sure what it meant. And then,
I was thinking, does this mean
whilst
that
you were
you're creating your own energy?
what are we doing? But yeah, so we're assuming that means unplugging from the usual energy.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. It's about making your home efficient enough to not be reliant on an incoming energy supplier, essentially. So,
according to recent studies, your house value could improve by what % if you made it more energy efficient?
16.
On a 3-bedroom semi-detached house, what is the cost of loft insulation between 0 to 300 millimetres? I've got 4 figures. £789, 1,380, 2,137, or 2,658.
I'm going to go with B, 1,300.
Apparently that's right. I mean, I don't know how big this house is, but you know, okay, good to know. According to government data in December 2023, how many UK homes have solar panels? Do you want some?
Oh, yeah,
Come
I think
on,
mine
it's
needs some.
much more fun if you just give me an answer. Rough guess.
I'm risking my career here, aren't I, if I get this wrong?
Right,
This could be another catastrophe.
1.28 million, 3.75 million, over 4 million, or 6.5 million.
I think it's the lower end of those. I would go with 1.28 million.
That would be correct. I have to say, they're quite ugly.
Yeah.
If you want to sell a house with solar panels, not everybody wants those.
Yeah.
And what is the total annual energy bill saving for a customer if they install all of the solutions in the Vibrant Gold package?
Ooh, total energy saving. I'm going to go with £4,200.
That would mean all of our answers are correct. Because they're all 4,200 a slight, but yes, approximately that. So I would say you do know your stuff. A short disclosure from me. These responses are based on a number of assumptions. Savings costs and overall sustainable living recommendations will differ depending on where customers live, what property they live in, and their annual energy usage.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure for having you.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Our next guest on the podcast is Adam Ramshaw from Lambert Smith Hampton,
who has over 10 years experience in the commercial property industry.
Production of Guys and Dolls. So I put my hand forward and got one of the leading roles, actually.
you must have been good if you got picked, or someone was
well,
bad.
Everyone else was really bad.
There was a relatively shallow pool of talent, I think, at the time. Got one of the lead roles, Nathan Detroit. And it turns out that I can't sing, and my attempt at a New York accent was probably so.
So catch up with us in a month's time.
And don't forget to subscribe to Career Catastrophes, brought to you by the Skipton Group, however you choose to listen to your podcasts.
And if you'd like to leave us a review, please do, either on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.